All right, total dominion. Not just some dominion, not just half dominion, not just 2/3 dominion, but total dominion. That is saying in my spirit right now. Good God. Come on. So, I mean, like, total dominion is like, that's king stuff right there, you know?
Yep.
So after you done conquered, have a conquering spirit to conquer the land because you're more than a conqueror because of Christ, now it's his dominion.
Yeah.
So, I think it was Miles Monroe. Phenomenal. You'd like Miles Monroe because if you're a podcaster here in terms of our audience, you would probably love Miles Monroe because he teaches you about business and practicality in terms of the body. So, and we love that. Just amen, someone. But Miles Monroe, he would talk about, you know, what a kingdom is. It's a king's dominion. You know, so whatever the personality traits of the king's dominion actually are, that is what is going to go down to the citizens. So the culture, the kingdom, is a personification and a culture that comes from the king directly. So these are his decrees, his imaginations, his visions, or whatever it is. And so therefore, you will build in ordinance with what the king is telling you to do. Or off of your head.
Yeah.
So, actually, I was looking at this. I watch a lot of anime, so you'll hear me say things like, I was watching anime one day. But I was watching anime, and it was the Fate Stay stuff. But this is an anime where basically you have servants who are ancient historical figures, either imagined or whatever. And basically there's this holy grail war and everything, you know, and you have a master, then you have the servant, and the servant serves the master, obviously. And Gilgamesh is one of these servants. So Gilgamesh has this massive ego, you know. He is just clad in gold, you know. He has all the weapons in all of history because of his treasury. So he would just summon weapons and just tear the entirety of whoever stands in front of him to shreds, you know. He's very, very OP, overpowered, right? So Gilgamesh was lamenting, though, that I hate this version of mankind because in my day, as king, everyone had a purpose. Even the slaves had a purpose. What you guys have done here is that you have made useless people being useless all the time because no one knows their purpose. Because there's no dominion. And I was like, huh. Now, again, he's not a good guy. He wanted to extinct the rest of the world so that he would have... And who is going to survive is going to be worthy to serve Gilgamesh. Okay,
right.
So bad guy, right.
Right. So this is not the gospel according to Gilgamesh. He just got that part right.
Right. But, you know, I thought that was interesting, you know, that to see that perspective in that. So I've always find the king's perspectives to be more interesting than, you know, presidents because they don't have that kind of power, you know. So it's very, very interesting the way that goes. Total dominion. I mean, what do you think about that when you think about total dominion?
I was reading... let me try and finish a thought here. In the law, when I say law, I'm being technical. So the first 5 books of what we call the Old Testament, what I like to call the Hebrew Bible, there is actually not a lot of reference to the Messiah, the coming Messiah. That usually comes a little bit later. So the prophets talk about that. The Psalms, the writings, they kind of address that more. The law really addresses the heart and thoughts of God. But there is this one reference in the book of Numbers, chapter 24. Where I want to land is probably verse 19, but where I'm going to start is verse 17. Verse 18 is really good, though. Verse 18 is what attracted me to this chapter in the first place. But 17. So this is the lone reference. There may be one others, but I'm going to call it lone because I don't think that there are very many references to the Messiah in the law at all. So I think this is the only one. If this is not the one, this is one of two, so there's not a lot. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob, a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and batter the brow of Moab, and destroy all the sons of tumult. And Edom shall be a possession. Seir also, his enemies, shall be a possession, while Israel does valiantly. That was 18. Verse 19, out of Jacob one shall have dominion and destroy the remains of the city. That. Right, that. Verse 19 is the part that really got to me. Out of Jacob one shall have dominion and destroy the remains of the city. So the reason why that got to me was because it starts talking about clear kingship, right? A scepter, right? So clear kingship. Out of Jacob, one shall have dominion. In my Bible is one that's capitalized. I love that. But then it talks about destroying the remains. And I think that's total dominion. So, right, to give it a practical example, I sometimes think about drug addicts who go through rehab. And they will have a period of sobriety and they'll get a different understanding of themselves and the as they call it, the disease that they have and the impact that this is having on their life and their family. But sometimes, right, they still relapse. Yeah. For all of the bad things that have been torn down in their lives, for all the havoc that they've suffered and sometimes all the havoc that they've reaped, for all that they've learned, for them being able to experience sobriety, I would say that a great deal of the city has been torn down. So they are now sober and have eyes wide open about what their struggle is. But still they relapse because there are some remains of the city. Yeah. Total dominion is when your eyes are wide open and you don't turn back. Right? When there's nothing left to rebuild. Yeah. And in this instance, the city that is destroyed was the city made with human hands that continued to relapse into worshiping another god. Yeah. They did not tear down the high places. They did not tear down the high places, right? They tore down a bunch of other stuff. They tore down the temples. They may or may not have torn down the Asherah poles, as the Bible refers to it, right? They may have not gone to another god's temple to worship. They may not have prayed out loud to another god, but they just didn't tear down the high places. And so when a good king died, they relapsed. Yeah. And I always think it's curious, too. They're never spared the same courtesy. Right? Like, when the Babylonians come in, obliterate. Yep. Rome comes in, obliterate. Yep. All these other nations came in and obliterated them. Nothing left. Yeah. As a matter of fact, if we catch you praying to one of your gods, you might be in trouble. Yep. But that's really the only link that they had. The only thing that they could halfway preserve is their God, but I don't think they viewed that God as a threat. Yeah. Which I think is interesting. To not see that God as a threat. Yeah. Yeah. But it's interesting, but I also think it's natural, right? It starts with dismissiveness. Yeah. And so that was their crime. Yeah. Not that they didn't see the other God. They just dismissed it as a threat. And it probably wasn't a threat until it was. And now the city's burned down. Just not all of it. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's the key. That's the only thing that they were ever able to keep. So even which part? So God. Yes. So whenever they had conquered, from what I understand, they would just completely obliterate, them, bring them into captivity, etc., etc. The only thing that they were allowed to keep
essentially was their god. And that was enough.
And that wasn't, yeah. Yep.
See, that's total dominion right there. Remember when Abram, when he was called Abram, came in with Sarah, and it's like, that's my sister, man. What are you talking about? That's not my wife, because they'll try to kill me because my wife is hot. Which was the actual conversation.
I'm pretty sure that's a direct quote.
That was pretty much the conversation in the
That's pretty much it.
amplified Justin version. But when, the king had a dream about, hey, you probably need to let that go before God becomes God. For God goes full God.
Yeah.
And you have a problem.
Yeah.
He's
He's just saying right now, but Super saying you're in trouble.
Right. Exactly. And that's the cool thing about God. He always gives you fair warning. Even when all the judgments happen, he's kind of like, now, if you do this, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
If you do this, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
So, but then again, they dismissed him.
Right. So all the warnings didn't mean anything.
Yep. Because they're too distracted by all the wealth and stuff like that they were having.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they didn't know the purpose, just kind of going around and doing stuff, And they had lost their purpose, even their sacrifices. This is why he was calling them out, saying that your sacrifices of bulls and rams do not, don't mean anything to me anymore, because it's just part of a ritual now.
Yep. My dad, preaching for years. I think he's been preaching for about as long as I've been born, right? So long time. And so sometimes when he's really preaching hard and nobody's saying amen, he would say, amen lights.
Right.
What you just said, amen lights. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yep. But I hadn't really thought about the dominion part, that the only thing that they're allowed to keep was their God.
Yep.
And because of their dismissiveness, because they were so wrapped up in what they had, missed it.
Yeah. Right, because it was what they destroyed what they thought was important.
Yeah.
And this was the story in, I think it was 1 Samuel. God said to Saul, King Saul, destroy everything. Don't leave anything, including the children and the animals.
Yeah.
And they were like, God, man, that was a great victory. We brought you back some gold and some children. And some animals to sacrifice. Right now, this is absolutely not me promoting the death of children. Right? I think he was in that instance trying to make a far bigger point, that it's not a threat until it is.
Right.
Right? It's not a threat until it is.
Right.
And so it leaving behind what you think is unimportant can be a matter of life and death.
Yeah. And for the record too, there was no one that was chasing down children from the historical record,
right?
Where they're chasing down children, chasing down women to slay them. He's like, look, if they stand against you, what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's on.
Yeah. Very technical. Yeah.
Yeah. So very, very technical. So just be aware of that, because people were saying, "Oh God, this is so awful." That he's like, well, but you see what happens when you leave the high places, when you leave the generation behind. Then you have a different culture. When you have a different culture, it's not the same as what it started out with. Then you begin to lose things, and then you become unfocused, and then you lose your purpose, and then you start to dismiss, and then you have a problem. Dang it. Yeah. Anyway, I think if anything else,
No,
okay.
I'm good.
I think we can go ahead and move on to the last portion, which is going to be the presence of God.